Welcome, everybody, to this whole life action hour on metabolic mastery. I'm Ocean Robbins, your host. Are you ready to feel more energized, more clear headed, and more resilient, not just today, but for the long haul? In today's interview, I'll be joined by Dr. Monisha Bhanote, a trailblazing quintuple board certified expert in integrative lifestyle medicine. And we're going to explore how your metabolism holds the key to lasting health and vitality. We're going to dive into the role of nutrition and gut health and inflammation management, and you're going to walk away with simple, science-backed, and ancient wisdom-inspired strategies to nourish your body and your mind. Whether you're curious about intermittent fasting or inflammation or supporting metabolism, this conversation will be packed with practical guidance and inspiration to help you thrive. Now, this event is part of Whole Life Club, which is Food Revolution Network's ongoing membership community. And some of the questions I'll be asking come from our members. As always, this is not medical advice. It's expert insight to help you make informed choices. Of course, consult with a qualified healthcare professional regarding your specific medical needs. Now, let me introduce the extraordinary Dr. Monisha Bhanote, founder of Wellcula and a quintuple board certified physician and a best-selling author who is known for her expertise in integrative medicine, culinary medicine, cytopathology, anatomic pathology, and clinical pathology. She merges ancient wisdom and cutting-edge science to support whole body cellular health. Dr. Bhanote is a leader in plant-based nutrition, and she focuses on the gut-brain connection, microbiome optimization, and reducing inflammation as pillars for longevity. Monisha, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ocean, for having me in your community again. And I'm really looking forward to talk about this topic.
Awesome. Well, let's just dive in with the topic of metabolic mastery, a term that you may have actually coined. What does this term mean to you, and why is it so important?
Well, I don't know if I coined the term metabolic mastery, but when we think about metabolic mastery, we think about it as the body's ability to efficiently convert nutrients into energy. And maintaining blood sugar, regulating inflammation, and all of that is part of how we support cellular repair. So I want you to think of, many people have heard the word of metabolism, and think of it like your internal engine. So metabolic mastery is really your engine is running smoothly inside your body, not too fast and not too slow. So you can turn food into the steady, usable energy that your body needs to make vitamins, minerals, nutrients, amino acids, hormones, all of this. You can keep your inflammation in check. You can repair your cells when needed. And so when this is working really well, how can you recognize it? That's a very important factor, is how can you recognize if your metabolism or you have metabolism mastery is working really well is you wake up energized without the need for 3 cups of coffee. You think clearly, no more brain fog. You digest your meals comfortably, meaning after you eat, you're not bloated. You maintain a healthy weight effortlessly, which is not so easy for many people. And then more importantly, you bounce back from stress and illness faster. That means that your metabolism is working optimally. Now, when it's out of sync from stress, poor sleep, processed food, inactivity, all the things, your body is really struggling to use this fuel efficiently. And that's where those symptoms show up.
So metabolism, let's just look at this from a really basic level for a second. So I think of it as the ability to metabolize, to make use of the nutrients that we absorb or hope to absorb that we take in. And so whether that's that could be oxygen, but most of all, of course, it's the nutrients in our food and our liquids, that all of that and our ability to synthesize that, use that, take the good, get rid of the bad, use it in the right balance, in a right order, and also convert it as appropriate. Is that kind of the basics of it? How would you expand on the word?
I think that is definitely the basics of it, right? So it's the air you breathe and the food you eat get converted into energy by your cells. Okay. And those cells, the human cells, and you know me, I love my cell model, so I'll just pull it up. I've got my cell model here, always have it on my desk to really explain it. So we've got over 37 trillion of these little cells. They are not this big. They're tiny, tiny microscopic cells in your body that have different functions. But there is a specific organelle or part of the cell inside here, which is really important when it comes to metabolic mastery, and that is your mitochondria. So inside here, we have mitochondria. And mitochondria are what really help create this energy, or ATP, as some people might know it. So our cells can function and our body can function. And that goes back to the food we consume and the air we breathe and the oxygen we bring in converts that.
Okay, so let's talk about the food we consume. How does what we eat, how does nutrition impact metabolic health? I mean, obviously, you need the nutrients in order to have them in your body, but metabolism is also about your ability to make use of said nutrients, right? So, how does this work?
Yeah. So the food you eat, whether that is the standard American diet or an ultra processed diet, your body needs to be able to break down that food. Okay. And many foods that have, the standard American diet and ultra processed foods are two diets that have ingredients in there that our body cannot utilize as efficiently. In fact, it can't even consider it like, I always say that when I'm working with my patients, I'm like, you're actually overfed, but malnourished. And they're like, what are you talking about? I eat all the time. And I'm like, yes, but your cells aren't getting the ingredients they need in order to do all the functions that they do, because we've got all the different functions, whether that's our thyroid cells or our gastric cells or our brain cells. All of these cells need nutrients. And the standard American diet and the ultra processed food diet do not provide these nutrients. So when I'm seeing people as having, anywhere from 20% to more of their diet of this, and then they're coming to me and complaining of these symptoms, I'm like, let's really take a deep dive into what you're eating. And I've actually even seen this with plant-based eaters, because they're eating processed food. They're not eating real food. So at the end of the day, really, ultra processed foods is one of the major culprits. Now, why is this important? Because when we think about metabolic health and all the chronic diseases that people are experiencing, we know that about 85% of today's chronic diseases, whether that's cardiovascular disease, diabetes, neurodegenerative, certain cancers, can be related to lifestyle. And the underlying thing with the lifestyle is the metabolic health. Okay. So how does food do that? Well, when you think about it, food really creates inflammation if it's not the right food. When your body doesn't break it down, your microbiome doesn't break it down, it is creating inflammation. So this is where a plant-based diet can really be supportive for metabolic health. In fact, think of a plant-based diet as metabolic strategy, right? So when your body is nourished with whole foods that are minimally processed, it's really giving the cells the information they need to function optimally. And it happens in a number of ways. So one of the first ways this happens is insulin regulation and blood sugar glucose balance, right? So whole foods like lentils, leafy greens, quinoa. And I talk to people all the time and I'm like, they don't eat beans or lentils. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, you're missing out, right? And how does this work is because they're rich in complex carbs and fiber. In fact, I have a 4 lentil like dal or soup, if you want to call it, going right now. And I'm like looking forward to eating it after we talk, because I know that this is going to be great for my blood sugar balance and insulin regulation. And there's a study that highlighted that you can have a 23% lower risk of developing diabetes compared to those who do not eat plant-based diets, which is, that's critical. And in this study, they found that people who ate whole grains, fruits, vegetables, nuts, legumes, while removing those refined grains and animal foods, had much better results. So that's number one, is insulin regulation and blood sugar balance is going to be really beneficial from a plant-based diet. Number
Yeah.
two is going to be you're feeding the microbiome. My little BFFs or best friends in the gut, your microbiome, love plant-based foods. A healthy metabolism really relies on a healthy gut. So for those of you who don't really know what's going on in the gut, like you might have heard, oh, the gut microbiome, and it's this word that's floating around, and you're not really sure what it is. So your gut microbiome is really the trillions of microbes or organisms living inside your digestive tract. Consider it your metabolic command center. So they're all talking to each other, and whether or not the signals are good or bad is going to depend on your microbiome. And so this microbiome is going to influence how you break down food and how you manage blood sugar. So it will also manage how you store fat. And at the end of the day, it'll manage how you regulate your mood. All of this is really important. But here's the thing is microbes that are in our gut can't thrive on their own. They need to be fed. And what do they love most? They love prebiotic fibers and polyphenols, okay, which you can get from a plant-based diet. So do you want me to tell you what some of those are? Maybe for the audience who's like, okay, I want to go eat these prebiotic fibers and these polyphenols so I can feed my microbiome.
Yeah, tell us a bit about prebiotic fibers and polyphenols.
Yes. Okay. So prebiotic fibers, think of those as so they're different than probiotics because many people are now familiar with probiotic rich food, which is also absolutely beneficial. But prebiotic fibers are the types of foods that feed your gut bacteria because the fiber reaches that part of the colon and then the bacteria wake up and they're like, oh gosh, this is really good. I'm able to thrive and the good ones grow. So you're going to find that in foods like garlic, onions, leeks, asparagus, oats, almonds, kiwi. So there's a number of foods that have them. Now, the other thing that I mentioned was polyphenols. Okay. So polyphenols are abundant in plant foods, and polyphenols, think of your berries, your green tea, and dark chocolate. Yes, you're allowed to eat dark chocolate on a plant-based diet, and legumes, right? These are all very high in polyphenols. Now, why are both prebiotic fibers and polyphenols so important to the gut microbiome? It is because they, your microbes, remember your BFFs in your gut, what they do is they ferment them and they turn them into something we call short chain fatty acids or postbiotics. Okay. And short chain fatty acids, once again, are very powerful. And I test a lot of my patients for this, and my patients come in, I eat the best diet. I'll be like, okay, if you say so, let me see what your gut test, your microbiome testing tells me, right? Because you can't lie your way out of testing. I will know if you have fiber in your diet or not. And the microbes, they produce these short chain fatty acids, known as butyrate, acetate, propionate, and this can be tested. And what they do is they help regulate blood sugar from a metabolism standpoint. They reduce inflammation and they fuel your mitochondria. You remember those little organelles inside of your cells? Yes, that is exactly what they do. So what happens then is you're getting this anti-inflammatory effect, which can calm the immune system, especially if your gut has been overactive or your body has been overactive. It can disrupt the insulin signaling and chronic inflammation that many people are walking around with. And what I really like is that a lot of this information is really coming out in the last decade. This is very new. So if you're like listening to this and you're like, well, how come my doctor hasn't told me about this? Why am I, how come there's just not enough information? Well, this is evolving. The microbiome topic is really evolving. And they're doing research now, even on specific gut bacteria. For example, we've seen that polyphenols can increase Akkermansia and bifidobacteria, which is really important for cognition, which is really important to keep inflammation down. And so But at the end of the day, this is all very new, but the mechanism is not. Basically, you feed the microbes balance your metabolism, and then your cells get the energy for both you and your body to function. It's really that simple.
Yeah. Wow. So complex and yet so simple at the same time. I want to make sure folks get this distinction that a lot of people take probiotic pills or capsules or supplements, and they're missing this critical distinction that probiotics are a part of a trio. There's prebiotics, there's probiotics, and there's postbiotics. And when you prebiotics are, again, just to summarize what you've just been saying here, they're the nourishment that feeds the good guys in our gut. And then there's the good guys, and then there's what they produce, like the short chain fatty acids, butyrate, and so forth. And those are critical also for our health. And when you just take a probiotic pill, you're not getting the trio. So when you eat wholesome, healthy foods with lots of fiber, you create the conditions for your own probiotics to thrive, and then they produce all of the postbiotics that help you thrive as well. So it's this beautiful symphony, really. And of course, some probiotic pills can populate more of the probiotic critters that then do good things in there. But for most people, the problem isn't getting them in there, it's letting them proliferate. Because at the end of the day, the microbiome is loaded with all kinds of creatures that can double, triple in a day with the right food.
With the next meal.
Right. So the issue isn't just getting them there, it's getting them fed. And that's where there's no shortcut for eating healthy food.
Well, so speaking of shortcuts, I think this is a great time. Like, I do want to talk about one thing that, a lot of people are considering, maybe their friends are taking, and they're like seeing them and they're like, oh, they're getting great results. And that is GLP. Okay, so GLP-1. So many people don't connect the fact that short chain fatty acids actually increase your body's natural ability to make GLP-1. Okay, and GLP-1, our body makes it. And I know it's really popular right now because there's medications on the market that can give you a dose of it, but your body technically makes it if you are creating short chain fatty acids, which is by eating those prebiotic fibers and those whole foods, plant-based foods. Now, for those who don't actually know what GLP-1 is, I don't think many people actually knew what it was. Like, it wasn't a vocabulary word in many people until the drug came out on the market. Okay. And I think it's
You're talking about semaglutide drugs here.
Yes. Exactly. And I want people to recognize the importance of having your body make it itself rather than being reliant on the drug. And the reason is because our body can make it. So GLP is a hormone. It's called glucagon-like peptide 1. Okay. So it's a hormone. It's linked with metabolic health. It is particularly, important in blood sugar regulation. Okay. So what we've been talking about, metabolic health, for insulin secretion, appetite control. So think about GLP as the hormone that helps your body, handle food more efficiently. Now, where is it made? Like I said, it's made in your body. It's specifically produced in the enteroendocrine cells located in your small intestine and your colon, right? So we actually, and I've seen them under the microscope. I can see these cells, and that's what they make, okay? And what these cells do is they respond to the nutrients that you are eating and that arrive in the gut after you eat. Now, what does GLP do in the body? Because we are making it, I'm making it, Ocean, you're making it, right? So it stimulates the pancreas, which is, where's my little human model? Let me grab this. I'm going to grab my little human model. All right. So let's look.
All right. Show and tell time.
Yeah. I love show and tell time, right? Because nobody knows where their body parts are. And I'm like, okay. So here's your little human body. So right behind here, behind the stomach here, there is an area there that it's almost like it goes from the stomach to here's your stomach, and then here's your duodenum. Your stomach connects to your duodenum. And right in the kind of C-shaped structure of the duodenum is something called a pancreas. Okay. And the pancreas has islet cells. It has pancreas is actually a very beautiful organ. It has all these beautiful cells and the structure of it. But what it does is GLP stimulates the pancreas to release insulin in response to the food, the glucose that has been entering when it's needed. It also, GLP, suppresses glucagon. Now, glucagon is a hormone that raises blood sugar. So it helps keep you from having those blood sugar spikes. GLP also slows gastric emptying. Okay, so that means the rate of food that is leaving your body, which can help you feel full and also helps you prevent rapid glucose spikes. Now, before I even tell you what else it does, which is why I'm thinking of the lentil like doll that I have going on here. Why do I eat so many lentils? Because I know that eating those prebiotic foods is going to slow down gastric emptying. I'm going to feel more full, and my body's going to my gut is going to get the prebiotics that it needs and the fiber that it needs from eating those lentils. It also, GLP, as most people are knowing it now, supports weight and metabolic control. And this is really the mechanism by which these drugs are targeting. So the things that are on the market, like the semaglutides, like Ozempic, Wegovy, whatever else name they will come up with. But at the end of the day, you can increase GLP-1 naturally in your body. Okay. And that's the important message here. All right. And how it really relates back to the metabolism, because you can't outsmart your body. Okay. You can't outdrug your body. So specific strategies to increase GLP-1: eat more fermentable fiber and prebiotics. I already mentioned that, right? So those foods, oats, garlics, leeks, Jerusalem artichokes, legumes are all going to support that GLP release. Okay. Eat those polyphenol rich foods, which I already mentioned, right? So berries, dark chocolate, green tea, pomegranate. I've got pomegranate in the fridge right now. Prioritize healthy fats. So MUFAs, or monounsaturated fats, like those in olive oil, avocado, nuts, can also help stimulate the body's natural GLP-1. And then time restricted eating and fasting. And I know we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Exercise regularly. I think if we go back to the foundation of what our body needs, we can help the body start creating the things that it was meant to create in the first place.
So the benefit of more GLP-1 in the body is what? Does it help us have more appetite control? Does it help us be less ruled by food cravings?
Yes. So it does both, right? So it helps us control our appetite, but it also helps us regulate our insulin secretion when it's needed, which insulin sensitivity becomes a challenge as we age. So creating GLP in our body naturally is going to work a lot better.
So the GLP-1 drugs, if I can go down that detour for a moment, they're both used and approved for use with type 2 diabetes, and they're also increasingly and very widely being used to help bring down excess weight. And you're describing some of the mechanisms for that and how we can produce GLP-1 in our own bodies and get some of those same results. For those who are taking GLP-1 drugs, and more people are today, that's kind of like a massive dose of GLP-1, obviously more than they're going to probably produce in their own bodies. How is that going to affect their health? Do you see it having benefit for some people? And for those who are using them, what are the precautions and things they need to do to maximize the benefits and minimize the dangers?
Okay, that's a great question, Ocean. So GLP drugs don't fix the root cause of metabolic dysfunction. Okay, so they're used in cases when lifestyle changes just aren't enough, or you have advanced insulin resistance. Really, think of GLP-1 as your body's one of your body's most intelligent messengers. It's really reading the state of your digestion. It's reading the state of your blood sugar, your hunger levels. It's like orchestrating that balance response. Now, keep in mind, every medication on the market comes with side effects. So GLP drugs can have nausea, they can have vomiting, they can have gallbladder issues. For them to work, your body really requires long-term use of them. And at the end of the day, they're not going to regenerate your gut microbiome health, which my 30 years in this space has shown me that the gut microbiome is absolutely critical for all health conditions. So if we're not going to regenerate it, it's just at the end of the day, one thing. So what are you going to do? You're going to go back to that list of those 5 things that I said. Eat the prebiotic rich food, eat the polyphenol rich food to support you. So then you could potentially lower the dose as needed, right? So it might be needed for some people with advanced disease, but I don't want you to become totally reliant on it, because I really want you to tap into what your body can do when you supply it with the ingredients that you need.
Yeah, thank you. Now, a lot of people who are on these drugs also are suddenly eating a lot less food. So is that a concern if they might miss out on some nutrients? If they don't change their diet and they're still eating a more junk food diet, that becomes a major issue, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So the body has certain needs and requirements, certain vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, all these things that it needs in order to function. And when I see people, whether they're doing it because they're taking this medication, or they're just doing it for weight loss, or they're doing intermittent fasting, maybe not optimally, they're reducing the nutrients the body needs. And from a perspective of measuring it in cellular health, I'm really looking at a factor called oxidative stress. Okay. Many people might not know what oxidative stress is. So if I go back to my cell, oxidative stress is really when there is an imbalance, unstable molecules produced by normal metabolism and environmental exposures and the antioxidants we receive. So, every day we're getting this environmental exposure, the food we eat, the air we breathe, the water we drink, all of this. And if our cells do not have the ingredients, meaning they don't have antioxidants to fight off this damage, that creates that imbalance, and creating these free radicals that love to go to other parts of the body and cause more damage on your cells. So then you don't function as well. This is also, oxidative stress is a precursor to all chronic diseases and aging. Okay. So that's where, thinking about key nutrients that can be beneficial and that, we test. So like things like vitamin C, vitamin E, polyphenols, glutathione levels, plant-based phytonutrients, all of this stuff are going to be really important to balance those free radicals that are fighting, but also to put that fire out on that metabolism that isn't working as well. Right. So you can find them in so many foods, right? So vitamin C rich foods, think citrus fruits, right? Kiwi, broccoli. There's a number of foods. If we think about polyphenols, like I said, it's all the colors of the rainbow, right? The more colorful foods you're going to eat. And then vitamin E rich foods are going to be the ones that are going to protect your kind of like I call it your cell phone cover, right? But it's going to protect your cell membranes, right? So the communication between your cells can happen very well. And those are found in seeds, like sunflower seeds, almonds, spinach. So we have seen in research that we can reduce oxidative stress levels and inflammation levels based off of our diet, which is really important to recognize. And ultimately, then you're lowering metabolic disease.
Yes, thank you. It seems to me that some people who are really stuck with food addiction may find that semaglutide drugs can help them get off of the bad stuff. And if they use the reduction in addiction pulls to reorient their diet in a healthier direction, to emphasize nutrient dense foods, probably with lower caloric consumption, then they have the potential to break negative cycles and actually potentially go off the drug someday at a lower body weight and with a body that's been trained in a new way and with a healthier microbiome. So that would be like best case, right?
Mm-hmm.
Worst case, they eat less of the same foods they were eating before, get nutrient deprived, and if ever they go off the drugs, the weight comes right back with a vengeance because their body feels like it's starving to death.
Yeah.
So it really depends again on what you eat. And if your sort of stomach share goes down a little bit, then it's all the more important to make sure you're getting the healthy foods. But it
Yeah.
always matters.
So let's think about a real life example of somebody and what they might be eating, right? So maybe your normal breakfast was bacon and eggs, you know, and now you're like, okay, I'm taking this medication, or you're not taking the medication, you know, it doesn't matter. But now you're switching to maybe a bowl of steel cut oats with berries and walnuts and flaxseed and all this stuff. What have you done from going from bacon and eggs to a real whole foods bowl is you fed your microbiome. You fed it prebiotic fiber. You delivered that insulin regulating omega 3s from the seeds, right? You flooded your system with polyphenols and antioxidants, and you've avoided those saturated fats, right? So this one meal can send a very different message to your metabolism, one that supports the balance, one that supports energy, and one that supports healing. All right. So it's not just about, okay, I'm taking a drug or I'm not taking a medication. You know, it's like, how are you actually supporting the balance that
Yeah.
your body requires? And you can literally do that with your next meal.
Yeah. Thank you. Um, I'd love to talk a little bit about the impact of stress on our metabolic health. How does stress affect it, and how do our choices affect our response to stress?
Yeah, absolutely. So, stress can affect metabolism quite a bit. We live in modern society, which is a very stressful society. Um, but stress is not just emotional, it is metabolic in a way. And when I think of the stress response, I'm thinking of it between the sympathetic and parasympathetic systems. So we have our autonomic nervous system, our body's way of responding to things. And when we're in a stress state, we're really coming from a sympathetic or overdrive state, which is basically the body is on survival mode. The body's just really trying to get by. And, you know, I talk to so many people and they're like, you know, I'm just really trying to get by. You know, if I can eat a healthy meal that like once a week, that's like a great, because we're just
Yeah.
always in overdrive where you're just moving too fast. Um, and when you're in that sympathetic state, you're not in the parasympathetic. So parasympathetic is your relaxed rest and digest. So imagine you're always in this stress state. Any food you eat, even if it's good food, your body can't break it down because it's not able to digest from a state of stress or because the body's just trying to hold on to everything. And one of the main factors in there is a hormone called cortisol. So cortisol does impact metabolism, and that's why stress, especially chronic unprocessed stress, leads to elevated levels of cortisol for quite a bit of time. Another test that I'm always testing my patients on, I'm like, let's just see where your cortisol levels are, not just a one time. Let's see in 24 hours of a day, are they being affected by the food you eat, the exercise you do, like your job, like what is really disrupting this? But cortisol will increase blood sugar. Okay. So which, you know, for people who are like, oh, I just can't seem to lose the weight. It's all around my belly, all of that. Well, you haven't addressed your stress response because cortisol will increase something called gluconeogenesis, which is your liver basically produces more glucose in response to the fight or fight. It's kind of like your brain doesn't know if it's going to get more food or not. So it's in this stress state. So it's like, oh, let's just raise blood sugar levels. It creates insulin resistance, right? So now over time, your body, your cells stop responding to insulin, really making higher glucose levels circulating, which in turn creates more fat storage, especially around that abdomen. Glucose triggers visceral fat accumulation. Now, what is that? That is the fat that goes around your organs. You know, all these little guys, these organs inside your body, right?
Yeah.
So those get covered with fat. How do I know that? Because, well, I've done that so many autopsies and I know what they look like on the inside.
Oh,
You never see it, but I see it. And
yeah.
then cortisol will also impact the gut barrier. You know, this is why, you know, there's a big conversation around leaky gut, and cortisol will increase that permeability, allowing inflammation or inflammatory agents like lipopolysaccharides to kind of like enter into circulation, which we don't want. And then cortisol will disrupt your sleep and your appetite hormones, right? Because there's a very specific relationship between our body's cortisol and melatonin production. So all of this is going to affect, you know, our metabolism by way of our stress via cortisol. But here's
Yeah.
the beautiful part of it. There's ways to manage it.
Well, let's talk about that because, of course, sometimes we can reduce stress in our lives, right? Like get out of a bad relationship or move away from a job we hate to something more fulfilling or live in a more safe environment. But a lot of times there are stresses that are kind of baked into the human experience. I mean,
Yeah.
life on Earth is not without stress, and that's probably for the best in some ways because we don't the least stressful thing might be to just sit on the couch all day watching television, right? But that's actually not a recipe for thriving either. We need to use our muscles. We need to do things, and sometimes stress creates strength. So tell us a little bit about how to respond to stress in a way that builds resilience.
Yes, and some of the things people are watching on TV also probably is not decreasing stress. But
True.
so one of the ways to manage stress in relationship to metabolic health is I really like parasympathetic enhancing practices, or we have a nerve, the longest nerve in our body, called the vagus nerve, which goes from the back of our brain all the way down to our gut, actually, and it's a bidirectional communication that's basically sending messages to your body and responding to stress. Now, vagal nerve stimulation is probably one of the most profound ways to kind of reduce inflammation, improve digestion, lower your cortisol. And how do we do it? I mean, I practice this a lot. I teach it quite a bit. Is number one, breathing. Your breath is extremely powerful, right? So
Yeah.
deep, slow breathing. If you ever think about somebody who's stressed out and they're talking really fast, and maybe you're arguing with somebody who's really stressed out, they're talking, they can't get a breath in, and they're getting even farther away from that like relaxed response. So something as simple as a 4-7-8 breath or a box breathing is can be beneficial. Humming, chanting, singing. What do I do with my children patients? I always ask them, I'm like, tell me what your favorite song is right now, your favorite artist. And then for some reason, right now, and probably most of the time, it's always Taylor Swift. And I'm like, all right, tell me the song. And then they tell me the song. And I'm like, all right, the next time you feel stressed or you feel like there's overwhelm going on, just sing the song. Doesn't matter who's there. Doesn't matter, go in the bathroom and sing whatever you got to do,
Mhm.
sing the song, right? Because we know that you can activate the vagus nerve because it travels right behind there, right? So by singing. Another way to activate it is gargling, right? So if you're stressed out in the morning, after you're done brushing your teeth, gargle with some salt water, and then splashes of cold water. So this is all like very simple vagal nerve stimulation, nature exposure. Okay. Nature exposure will also lower your salivary cortisol, things like forest bathing and grounding. I know we were talking about forest bathing earlier, and even 20 minutes in a green space can help decrease those pro-inflammatory cytokines. Okay. And if you can't get to a green space, say it's winter time, put a picture up, like just look at the green space and do a visualization around it, because even that can work. I think another thing that people don't think about is I really like stillness or structured stillness, like it's really hard for people to just be still and quiet with themselves. I think I like to think of stillness not as a luxury, but really a biologic need, right? Like your body needs stillness. Okay. And your body doesn't need to always feel like it's pushing through with something. And honestly, the body never forgets. So how you treat your body with these things can really be, can be beneficial. And there's a very strong connection between, the mindfulness and all these practices that we do, and metabolic health, like I said, from that sympathetic to the parasympathetic. It will improve your blood sugar regulation. It will support the digestion and improve your sleep. All of these things. And they're research backed, which is absolutely fabulous.
I mean, what I love about the list you just gave is these things don't just make you feel better, they actually make things get better, which also makes you feel better, right? So there's short-term and long-term benefit. And just to sort of underline a couple of those points, a hot and cold shower back and forth like 3 times, where you make sure you have the cold on for a minimum of 20 or 30 seconds. And you just get it and make sure you get it over your head as well as the rest of your body. And then you go back to hot. It's amazing how that can change state. And then another thing I will comment on is the social benefit of being in a regulated body. That, when I'm around somebody who's really agitated, I tend to feel more agitated. And if I get agitated, it can create a negative feedback loop. If I'm able to stay calm, take a deep breath, ground and center, then often that helps them to get more regulated. And so we are very social and we impact each other. Our microbiomes don't end at our fingertips. There's that energy that's also flowing from us, which also is also transmutable. And so then when you center and ground in your own health and well-being, you actually do so on behalf of, in some way, everybody you interact with, who will be a little bit more whole, a little bit more balanced, a little more regulated, a little more resilient because of the choices that you make. I'd love to ask you one more thing that's kind of, I know, burning for a lot of people in our community, which is intermittent fasting or time-restricted eating. What are the impacts of this? What are people, when is it helpful, and what do people do wrong with it?
Yes, that's a great question. So, intermittent fasting has become quite popular in the last decade or so, and the idea behind intermittent fasting is that you're giving your body enough time to rest so it can clear up all the cellular junk, or autophagy is the process in your body, like all the misfolded proteins and all the DNA that's bad and all of that. So the idea is that you do fasting, and instead of your body working to digest the food that you're putting in because you're not eating any food, the body gets to switch into a work mode where it's cleaning up. Okay. And cleaning up misfolded protein and DNA could potentially help you live a longer, healthier life. Now, some of the things that I see people do and make mistakes around this is When they are intermittent fasting, they are not also at the same time giving themselves nutrients when needed. Okay. So we had talked about earlier that nutrients are really critical. So you can't eliminate the nutrients from the body. So one of the things I see is people will do water fast, or like every day they're fasting, maybe doing a 16-hour fast and then just eating this small window, but there's only so much food you can eat in that small window. So now you're not actually getting the benefit that you should be getting because you still need the nutrients. Right. So that's one thing I'm noticing. And then the other thing is when people are fasting that they're still not eating an unprocessed diet afterwards, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, okay, let me not eat for 12, 14 hours, but then I'm going to go eat a standard American or ultra processed diet. So that happens quite a bit. Now, the question becomes, can you intermittent fast on a whole foods plant-based diet? Absolutely. I'm intermittent fasting right now. I've been doing this for a very long time. And intermittent fasting, I have found works well for me and for my patients if we do it on a regular basis, meaning every day, not like one day we put the body into shock and then the rest of the week we're eating like regular. So I like consistency. I think our body also likes consistency when it comes to the rhythms of the body. The same time you wake up every day, the same time you go to bed every day, you eat the same time. And that's where intermittent fasting done right can really work well. So I was talking about, can you do it on a whole foods plant-based diet? The key is nutrient density. So you have to eat the nutrients. You can't like do intermittent fasting and then just go eat a salad. You're going to have to eat some whole grains. You're going to have to eat some protein, tofu, lentils, nuts, seeds. You got to fit that in. So when you're focused on a whole foods, plant-based intermittent fasting, focus on protein-rich foods. Those lentils, tofu, tempeh, chickpeas, hemp seeds, quinoa, all of that can be really good. Healthy fats, do not eliminate the fats. Avocado, walnuts, chia, tahini. This is going to help regulate that blood sugar. Okay. Minerals, magnesium and potassium from the leafy greens that we eat, sea vegetables, beans, all of that. Hydration. You can see, since I'm still in intermittent fasting mode, you saw me like drinking my water, right? So make
Yeah.
sure you are hydrated, especially when fasting. I think fasting is not about pushing the body harder. It's about listening to the rhythms, right? So start with a simple, maybe 12, 12, meaning 12 hours of fasting, 12-hour window of when you eat your food. This is far more sustainable than jumping into those aggressive protocols.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then a lot of times people skip breakfast and eat, say, between noon and 8 p.m., let's say. But it seems that the research is showing that it's better to go to bed on a somewhat more empty stomach, right? So, and that if you're going to choose, better to skip dinner than breakfast, right? Or to just have it all within a certain window. What's your thought?
My thought on that is you will sleep better when your stomach is full, but I always recommend at least 3 hours between when you've had your last meal to when you go to bed. So if you're going to bed at 9 o'clock, your last meal is at 6 o'clock. Okay. So I would adjust your eating window to that because um, if the body is focusing on breaking down the food that it just ate at 9:30 at night, you're not going to sleep as well. You're just not, because the body's like, what do I do? Do I digest or do I sleep?
Yeah, got it. Now, some people also have other definitions of intermittent fasting, like which is really more what you might call water fasting, where you have, say, a day on and a day off or something like that. Do you think there's value to extended fasting or, say, a full 24-hour period sometimes? And if so, how frequently and what are the dangers?
Ooh. I think for most people, doing a intermittent fast, a long fast like that, could potentially offset their metabolism in a negative way. The only time I have recommended extended fasts like that is with my cancer patients who are going through chemotherapy to avoid the side effects of chemotherapy. But I have seen, like, with many women, and women are super sensitive to fasting, um, especially due to, we have all our hormones that we have to worry about, from our thyroid hormones to our female hormones, all of that. So because we have a greater hormonal sensitivity, I don't think that the body should necessarily fast longer like that. I think you got to fast smarter.
Yeah, thank you. Um, and is it important for menstruating women to fast or not fast around their cycles?
Yeah. So when it comes to menstruating women, that's even more complicated than just regular fasting, right? So whether if you're menopausal versus if you're still menstruating, because the body is going to be more insulin sensitive in the follicular phase. Okay. So, whereas you don't want to do extreme fasting during ovulation or your mid cycle. And then afterwards in your luteal phase, you might want to shorten the fast. So the follicular phase, you can have a little bit of a longer fast. During your ovulation, you don't want any extremes. And then your luteal, you can shorten that fast to maybe 10 or 12 hours. With fasting, I do recommend people work with a practitioner because you also want to make sure you're getting the nutrients, or at least a nutritioner. So somebody to make sure that you're getting the nutrients you need in the windows that you're consuming food.
Thank you. I want to circle back to a common perception of metabolism. A lot of people think that as they get older, their metabolism slows down. And I think what this really means is that they burn less food for energy and convert it more into fat. And so, is there any way to shift that cycle back or to optimize it so that we have lots of energy and so that we don't produce excessive fat stores?
Yes, this is very common. As we age, our metabolism does slow down, and this happens naturally because of some changes the body is going through. So one of the changes the body goes through is it loses muscle mass. So you decrease muscle mass in the body. You also have those hormonal shifts that we talked about. So the body has lower estrogen and lower testosterone, which can alter where the fat is distributed, and then your mitochondria, my little favorite organelles in here, they slow down and reduce your body's ability to convert that food into energy. So there's three things going on here on this kind of mechanism pathway. So what do? You're going to target that specifically, right? So you're going to prioritize muscle. That's basically metabolic gold, right? So it is your most metabolically active tissue. And because as we age, for people over 60, you're losing 3 to 8% of your muscle mass every decade. Resistance training is a great thing. I've actually got, I'm not quite there yet, but in between, I was like, before our call, and I've got my weights right by me. As much like weights and resistance training that I can do, that just consistently is going to be really important. And research has shown that individuals who do adult strength training have higher metabolic rates and better blood sugar control than those who don't. Okay, so prioritize your muscle. Number 2 is optimize your protein intake and timing, right? So many adults underconsume protein, and we're not talking the extremes that they're telling you to do on social media. That is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about aiming for 20 to 30 grams of high quality plant protein per meal, right? So that'll look like lentils, that'll look like tofu, that'll look like hemp seeds, tempeh, all of that. And then space it throughout the day. So if you're eating 3 meals a day, space it. If you're eating 2 meals a day, space it to make sure you're getting it. And that's important for muscle repair. And then The third thing is balance the blood sugar with fiber and spices. So we already talked quite a bit about fiber, high fiber plant foods. And then think about the insulin sensitizing spices, which is also critical, right? So cinnamon. So if you're still drinking your cup of coffee, put some cinnamon in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Turmeric. I mean, you should see the amount of turmeric I just put in my lentils. Like my spatula is like already stained. Fenugreek can be really good. So thinking about your spices. And then balance your meals with the complex carbs, fat, and protein. So that was number one, prioritize muscle. Number two, optimize your protein intake and timing. Number three, balance that blood sugar with fiber and spices. And number four, sync with circadian rhythm. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
As we age, our melatonin secretion also decreases and our cortisol, that stress hormone, shifts, which affects our sleep and metabolism. This is why as we get older, adults don't sleep as long, right? So light exposure first thing in the morning, like even if it's you sitting outside and having your cup of coffee, which I'm not recommending having coffee on an empty stomach, but I'm just saying, if sit outside, have your glass of water, warm water, and get the sun in. Okay. And then early meal timing, as we discussed, and then a consistent bedtime, whether that's on the weekday or the weekend, right? So metabolism, as you age, is going to be different than when you were younger in your 30s. And guess what? That's okay. Okay. The idea is not to rev it up, it is to tune it wisely. And with the right movement, the right nourishment, the right nervous system regulation, all of this can support our metabolism and energy, so we can age healthy at any stage.
Well, I was going to ask you for some closing summary thoughts, but I think you just delivered them. What a beautiful overview of a roadmap to a vibrant, long, healthy, and satisfying life. We've been talking here, folks, with Dr. Monisha Bhanote, brilliant leader and guide and mentor for all of us. Monisha, if people want to contact you, what is the best mechanism?
Yes, so my website is drbhanote.com. So it's drbhanote.com. And I am on social media, on YouTube, on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, with Dr. Bhanote as well. And I've got plenty of plant-based recipes and blogs and information to share with you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to share this time with you. Thank you for your wisdom, for your decades of insight, and for your partnership in the food revolution.
Thank you so much, Ocean.
When it comes to cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes, heart disease, and other chronic illness, what really matters isn't how many books you read, how many webinars you attend, or how much you know. What really matters at the end of the day is what you eat and how you live. The science has given us what we need to know. Now it's time for action. It's time to implement and optimize your healthy lifestyle. It's time to get results. It's time to say goodbye to confusion and hello to clarity. It's time to say goodbye to bad habits and hello to good ones. It's time to fall in love with foods that love you back. It's time to join a community that will support you in achieving your goals. It's time for Whole Life Club.